I was wondering if Carc, if you could speak to that based on your knowledge and your perspective, because Carc's actually a really smart guy. That based on what you know, is it ridiculous to suggest that SafeMoon or John could have made 19 million or whatever that number is of Tether based off of market making with Bitmart?
Well, again, if there's a market making deal that led to some sort of money being made on SafeMoon's behalf, um, there is something that John did tell me once, where he said something to the effect of that when he made deals with exchanges, that I don't want to use the wrong verbiage, but something to the effect of that he basically raked them over the coals. He got a really good deal out of it in one way or another, and I'm not exactly sure what that means. So, but no, I don't know. I don't know where the funds go and how the funds are managed, or if there was sort of some weird market making deal that there's some percentage that was moved around or something to that effect. If it is some sort of special deal, that might be able to explain it. But I just don't know. Because that's the problem with these centralized exchanges is they're black boxes. You don't know exactly. They treat different tokens differently. They have different. They do in the exchange is not transparent like it is on the blockchain. And so, yeah, you can have different deals and have absolutely no knowledge or indications to what's going on. And that's one of the reasons why I just don't like it. And I think it would be valuable on SafeMoon's side to be able to map out and to just as a form of transparency. I think it would be valuable and good, I think, for everyone for them to explain exactly how things do work with Bitmart and how that money does move around and what happens with the 5% that is designated for auto liquidity, maybe even demonstrate some of the transactions for that.
They'll
That
never
would be
do that
absolutely
though.
wonderful.
They'll never do that because they would have done it already. I mean, none of that would have violated anything with the lawsuit, but they'll never do that. Hey, we have somebody named Docstradamus, who looks like they're a CEO of a coin. Maybe they can speak more to Bitmart.
Yeah, so we actually have a reflections token on Bitmart. Thanks for letting me speak. So you do get paid out in USDT from a reflection token, but there's a very possible way that SafeMoon actually did make this money. So you have a market maker for multiple reasons, and they all have a different account associated with it. So each time I go through something, imagine there's a different account for it. So one is the order book. That's your 25 and 25. So you've got your 25,000 in USD, and then you got your 25,000 in the token. And the order book is made to maintain itself. So you never want to sell anything out of your order book. It just goes up and down, keeps the price stable. You can validate this by going onto like a Bitmart and buying 40,000 in BUSD at a time. It'll either skyrocket or tank the price very momentarily. So account number two with your market maker is usually volume. And market makers don't get paid for volume accounts either. It's just your standard monthly fee. And that's to meet minimum volume requirements or maybe exceed volume in some capacity. But then there are 3 and 4 accounts, and those are called cash out accounts. So because you want your assets to stay stable in account 1 and 2, if you as a company want to taper off of assets in a way that doesn't harm anyone and doesn't negatively impact anyone, you send it to account number 3 and 4, which are cash out accounts. Now the market maker does take profits from this along with you. So, because exchanges don't operate on a liquidity pool, it's the only prices that you can control. I can't control my price in PancakeSwap. I can control it on an exchange. So, the exchange, more or less, to meet the spread requirements, has to maintain the same price as it is on PancakeSwap. So, if I have these accounts set up and I have a whole bunch of buys going on Bitmart, my company is selling an equivalent on top of it. So that's probably where the $15 million came from, because there's no other way to manage it.
Wait, sorry, I'm confused. Can you kind of speak to this slightly more about how this cash out works? Because I think a lot of us aren't familiar with why or how you could cash out money. Because you have to understand, all this money was meant to be for investors, right? And obviously, we all know you can't make money from thin air. So if no money is being generated through the volume for the coin, how is money being made out of thin air sort of into the company's pocket?
So you've got organic buys on Bitmart, right? And again, so if they listed with multiple exchanges, you have to go off a singular price point that your market maker is going to want to match. In our case, on BSC, or if you're on Uniswap, right, you want to go off of the DEX price. Now, we don't control the entire liquidity pool. I guess we technically do, but you should never control the entire liquidity pool on a DEX, right? So those buys are purely organic, right? If someone buys, it raises the price. If someone sells, it lowers the price. It's that easy. Every one of the exchanges has to match the price. So your order book and your volume accounts are made to keep that price stable, to make sure that big buys on Bitmart don't cause this massive amount of arbitrage, and someone can go and turn and rob your liquidity pool, or vice versa, right? You want to make sure everything maintains a stable price, and you can control the price on exchanges. So because you don't want your buy and sell accounts, your order book maintenance accounts, to actually impact, you don't want to sell or buy actual tokens from it. You just want it maintaining the spread. The cash out accounts, when someone does have an organic buy on Bitmart, it would sell the equivalent of that buy. So it's actually doing it in a way that doesn't negatively impact holders. Otherwise, the money just stays in Bitmart.
I'm sorry. So when there's a buy, you sell, but when there's a sell, you have to buy, right? So I don't understand where all this.
That's what the order book does. So think of this cash out account being just when somebody buys, it's an equivalent taper off. It's just automatic sell orders coming from this. So
yeah, but it doesn't make sense. No, I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't make sense to how then the order book wouldn't be depleted, because when you're buying, when there's a buy, you cash out. When there's a sell, you buy from the order book. So wouldn't you be depleting your reserves from your order book if you're just buying, and then when there's a buy, you sell? Like, so money's flowing out, but where's the money flowing back into your order book, I guess?
So it doesn't really flow back into the order book because it's separate. It's similar to like if someone were just to go and buy on Bitmart or sell on Bitmart outside who doesn't own the token. There's no order book associated with it. The only order book is to maintain that spread. So that's your first account. And why Papa is probably saying it was going to multiple accounts, and you think one is John's personal account, and it very well may have been. It's because they set up these other accounts to taper off of the mini buys that they were getting at the time. Because as that price goes up, if you don't have those accounts, as a project, you're not making anything at all. So basically, and we learned this too late. And I think the big problem with exchanges is nobody gives you a guidebook up front of like what you can and can't do. But as your price goes up on an exchange, because it's going up on PancakeSwap, you still don't have a reasonable way to sell as a project owner unless you have one of these other accounts go up. So the money, if you don't have a cash out account, stays in Bitmart, and it will continue to stay in Bitmart. The money, if you do have a cash out account, does actually come back to the company, come back to the organization and the enterprise.
I'm just unfamiliar with this because, and maybe somebody can explain it better. I just kind of always operate sort of on a pretty simplistic model of like, if money's marked for something and then all of a sudden you're generating profit from that, right? Money's marked for a liquidity pool. All of a sudden the liquidity pool is supposedly staying the same, but money is being generated. And there's no explanation how, other than, well, when they buy, we sell, and then we take the money. I don't understand how that's not like a repurposing of funds.
Well, exchanges. Oh, sorry, man. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Exchanges operate on their own liquidity pool. Like no token has a liquidity pool on an exchange. You have a buy and sell order book. So Exchanger is operating on their own. And that's why like institutional adoption of Coinbase never happened, because they have to freeze assets when people withdraw, because that's the centralized liquidity for the exchange, the entirety of the exchange. So what happens, and sometimes these exchanges make even more money or have a larger liquidity pool, is when people are buying this new token on an exchange, all that is going to the centralized liquidity pool. So some people, again, we didn't do this because we didn't know, quite frankly, but some people will set up those cash out accounts, and instead of all that money going to the exchange's central liquidity pool, they end up going to the projects. And that does nothing to negatively impact the price. Does nothing to negatively impact the liquidity pool of the project itself.
Wouldn't it thin out the liquidity on the centralized exchange, though?
It would, but on this scale, it wouldn't impact anything. Like,
well, what we had, and what I was curious about was SafeMoon kept sending like billions and billions of tokens to this centralized exchange. And my question was, well, if there's a balance of tokens, they wouldn't need to do that, right? Like eventually they would just have enough liquidity and they'd be fine. But if what you're telling us is that they were draining it out sort of to the side to make a profit while basically constantly repurposing these funds, it's pretty easy to see why they were so excited to send funds to Bitmart, right? Is because they basically they found out a way to just turn these funds into like basically go from this centralized exchange and just throw it into their own pockets. I mean, I don't know if this is standard practice or whatever, but this is certainly not the deal that we were all told about. And this wasn't from market making. You keep saying it's not impacting the price, but to me, if it's impacting the liquidity, then it is impacting price.
Liquidity and price are always interchangeable, whether it's centralized or decentralized.
Yeah, but what's changing, carc, is who's controlling that liquidity. From the scenario Dr. Stradamus was talking about, it sounds like it goes from the liquidity pool to being like a team-controlled wallet by basically laundering it through the exchanges.
I wouldn't call it laundering. I wouldn't go that extreme with it. I think it comes off negative because everybody here is so unfamiliar with it. So like SafeMoon wouldn't be making any money unless they sold tokens, right? We could all agree on that. That's how their economic model was. They issued themselves tokens. You're not going to make money unless you sell it, right?
Correct.
So they've got two options to sell it. They could sell it from PancakeSwap, which just destroys the liquidity pool because they had so much money in these tokens. It would just destroy the liquidity pool. It would ruin the entire project.
I'm still confused on how this doesn't negatively impact. That's just something that doesn't compute with me.
Yeah, this sounds like financial alchemy, dude. The money has to be coming from somewhere.
See, I want to say this as well. I mean, what he's saying is, look, SafeMoon wanted to sell. They can either sell on a DEX or on a CEX. So they were just doing it on the CEX to try to hide it and or not negatively impact price.
It seems like we're trying to say that there is no way that this has a negative impact on anybody, but it's also at the same time able to produce $15 million